You are now watching an Agorist production by We Are Change Texas Hill Country and Truth Exposed Radio, coming to you from Austin, Texas at Brave New Books.
Side of that negative propaganda is emotional freedom. And we define freedom pretty clearly, the absence of coercion. In the book, I say the ability to exercise your will within your rights without the forceful interference of others. But how much do we do this to ourselves? How many of us have been conditioned by our parents, by schools, of this punishment mentality? Oh, you did something wrong? You better beat yourself up about it. You better think about what you did. All of us, when we start out as statists on this journey, are in some severe way emotionally crippled. You cannot be a statist. You cannot sit there and conscientiously, deliberately advocate for other human beings to be controlled by coercion without there being something wrong with your soul. Maybe soul is a bad metaphor for a word for the precise intellectual, biological, psychological processes that I'm talking about. But when you realize how free you really are and have respect for your own will, you emerge as a different kind of free person. And I can't say that I'm there, but on my government-induced, taxpayer-funded spiritual retreat in Washington, D.C., I certainly had enough time to think about this and get to a deeper level of understanding, and that's part of what motivated me to write this book. And there's a lot in here that you might think of as straightforward or stuff that other people have said before, and I would agree. I don't take credit for any of my ideas being original at all. But there are two things in here that are very important that have been missing from the conversation about freedom. And one is this idea of personal freedom, of internal freedom, of respect for yourself. And I gotta say, I have been so reassured by the reception of the book so far. It's been amazing. That no one has said, oh, well, Adam, you should have written your book about freedom without that personal stuff. Just stick to the political. When you present it this way, everybody gets it. It's a kind of undeniable truth. And the other thing about the book that's unique, that I think is very important, is the solutions that people are missing. And I gotta admit, maybe it's not a confession, but I'm such a South Park geek. I'm going to make a South Park reference here. And not just a general South Park reference, to a specific episode. How many of you have seen the one about the underpants gnomes? All right. Yeah, right. The people half listening in the hallway. A few hands. Okay, so in the Underpants Gnomes episode, these magical underpants gnomes that go steal all the kids' underwear and call themselves a corporation and say that their process is, well, step 1, profit. Step 2, step 3, oh, I'm sorry, step 1, underpants. Step 1, underpants. Step 2, step 3, profit. And they don't really learn how corporations work, obviously. And if you go to people with the message of freedom like this, they don't really see how it works either. And I've had the good fortune of having gotten it wrong enough and had the intellectual integrity to pursue the truth, to figure out what's happening, to see the course. Again, this is in the book in chapter 10, in Looking Forward. And a lot of people who are advocating for a voluntary society go, all right, step 1, paradigm shift. Step 2, social collapse. Step freedom, and they use the word freedom, and they really mean it. They have a twisted definition that is freedom for themselves. They don't care how many brown people we kill on the other side of the planet. I mean, you could say it's the same thing for liberals in the sense when liberals use the word freedom. You know, economic freedom, freedom from want, freedom for themselves. And we don't care how much of the economy trash or how many, entrepreneurial ventures are destroyed. We have freedom for ourselves. And freedom is about relationships. By definition, it is about being respected as an individual. It is about that coming together. And when you recognize that the current systems aren't sustainable, and again, if you want to get into this a little more in the book, you can see how I prove this analytically in a really irrefutable way. I'm not going to go into all of the steps of that analysis here. But when you realize that the current systems are unsustainable, you realize that not only do they have to, but they already are falling away in chunks. Now, I did a video today about Jade Helm, and a lot of people have been asking me about this. And I haven't touched on it until today because finally I was like, I got sick of being asked. Because it's not that important. It's a distraction. If you look at Jade Helm, there's sort of two ways they want you to react. Either, yeah, government is keeping us safe. Like a farmer protects his cattle. And you can use this as an opportunity to talk to people with that mentality. The other one is, be afraid, be very afraid. Government is big, bad, and powerful, and they're coming to fuck you up in your town. Either way, you lose. If you're afraid, you're not free. And the reason I mention this is to get to this beautiful, bigger process that we see going on. You want to know what the biggest chunk that has fallen away from government already? This just occurred to me as I was speaking. It's never occurred to me before. I really just want to celebrate this little epiphany right now, this little mini epiphany of the significance of this, of connecting these ideas of government falling apart in chunks. There are sort of two huge central brackets to government, right? Anybody want to know? You guys know what I'm talking about? Your guesses? Force and finance, war and banking. Absolutely, that was it. That was what I'm thinking about. Already, you see banking just starting to fall apart in the one little chunk, the almost microscopic chunk that is Bitcoin. But war. What does it take to make war? Not just that, no. Gullibility of the enforcement class. You have to have enough dumb, young, mostly men, willing to go meet in a field where none of them live and kill each other because they're wearing different fucking colors. What was the last time that happened? You cannot do that in a world as aware and connected as ours. That chunk of the racket is gone, and I say this as a participant in the war on terror who tortured people in Fallujah and was that much of a sucker. That's the worst they can get away with. They have to raise the specter of the boogeyman, Osama bin Laden. And now it's ISIS. And it's like, because there's a couple scary videos online, we have to steal half your income. Oh, okay. The answer, when you see this, when you see that these systems are unsustainable, is localization. We take governments apart from the top down. Now, in order for this to happen, we have to get to a critical mass. There's two sides to this. There's the outreach and the advocacy and the activism, and there's the living it. And that's what I really want to talk about. Okay, now I'm getting started. Just kidding. We'll wrap this up on this idea. I'm actually, the grand finale is getting all the speakers up here for Q&A. So I'm really excited about everybody getting to have that chance to interact. So, the critical mass to actually conscientiously, deliberately dismantle the state. The reason we have to do this, what gives me the urgency, because I know that this is inevitable. With or without me, I like to say,
the state dies before I do.
Yeah.
That requires a microphone.
It's going to happen with or without me, with or without any of you. But it's going to happen with all of us because we're all here right now. We all get to be a part of this. We don't have to. There's no mandate. You ever feel from the people who are telling you to be afraid of this, be afraid of that, and for the first time you're being afraid of the right things? They are still manipulating you. They are entrenching your slavery, and I'm as guilty of this as well. And in a way, I gave the history of my activism to show you all the ways I've done things wrong. In confronting the state, the sheeple will say, "Why do you want a violent revolution?" Well, when you're cocking shotguns, even when you're advocating peace, the action is the message. Even peacefully debating and engaging with statism and arguing, your message is conflict. But we are so small of a minority right now. And I define, to me, the definition that counts, whatever conclusions you may come to as a result, if you can define freedom as a principle. Remember, we're not a political movement. It's a philosophy movement, an ethics movement, a morality movement. I'd be hard-pressed to think we're maybe... I'll ask you guys, by that definition, 1% of the population would be 3.2 million. How many people do you think in America can articulate freedom as a principle? And at least attempt to apply it consistently. 3.2 million seems like a lot now, and you go, "Oh, fuck, we're a lot less than 1%, aren't we?" It wasn't people who voted for Ron Paul you can count. As great as his work was, there were a lot of people he put in his ranks who just liked him because he was the one that wasn't full of shit. And that's cool. But the real value was that he got people to read Rothbard. Yep. That he got people converted to a different way of thinking, whatever that may be. For you, for them, for the people around you, whatever. We got to be honest about this. We got to be direct about this. The mission of a movement in this position is to win converts. You don't do it by telling people to be angry and sad and afraid. So if you want to do the real work,